Hi, this is Darren Lyle. Well, the last part of the texture painting puzzle here, I think, is just going to be a specular map. And all a specular map is just telling where the model is going to be shiny and where it isn't. It's just a black and white map, a grayscale map. And any parts that are white are going to be shiny on the character, and any parts that are black are going to be dull. Now what I've done is to do this, in my materials panel here, I've just turned down the specular intensity to about 0.2. So I think what I want to do is paint specular on the little goggles here. I may also do some extra color map details too, make them a little dirty or something like that. But for right now, let's just paint specular information. So let's create a texture paint slot for specular intensity. So I'll create that, and for this I'll just call this shine. Why not? And I'll continue with the texture size of 2048. And for this, a color of black is just fine. I think that's all we need. And I'm just going to click OK. Now that creates a new texture slot here. And if we take a look at it, it's just pitch black. And it's also created a new texture slot over here. It's now called Specular Intensity. And since that is the same thing as that, I'll go ahead and change the name to Shine. Okay. The last thing I want to do before I get started painting is go ahead and save this image out. Because if I tried to hit my Save All Images button here, I would get a little error, invalid path, and that means that this hasn't been saved to the hard drive yet. So let's go ahead and do that. Go to Image, Save as Image, and I'll just call it Shine. That's fine for now. Save image. Okay, so now we are ready to begin painting our specular highlights. I'm going to go to face select mode and turn off all the selection, and then with my L key just come in and choose these pieces. There we go. So now we're only painting on that, and let me zoom into I believe the goggles are up here. Let's looks like I've got it set to a half grayscale, and I'll just crank this up a little bit higher so it's more near white. And now as I paint here, let me increase the strength some. Should be able to see. It may be hard to see here, but if I zoom in some, there we go. Now you can see that it's we've got information being laid down on the UV map here. And this is just telling Blender what should be shiny and what shouldn't be. Notice I'm getting some strange artifacts here. That happens. I'm going to undo it. And I'm going to try a smaller brush here. And you can also go in and just clean that up as well. You don't have to live with that if you don't want to. So I'm just coming through and painting some highlights here, just to see if we can get a little bit of specular shine on these. And I don't want it all over. I want them to feel like they've been used and some of the shine is worn off. I'm also going to come in here and paint directly on here. See how this works. I'm not really seeing a whole lot of shine as I paint on here, but I think one thing that I forgot was under the shine texture slot here is to scroll down and to turn off use alpha. And if I do that, I don't see a whole lot of difference here in the 3D view. But if I go to rendered shading here, it'll just take a moment. You can kind of see the specular highlights here. Now if I turned use alpha back on, you can see what's going to happen is it's going to put specular highlights back on the whole thing, and we don't want that. So I'm just going to turn that off so I can see it isolated to where I paint. So I'll go back to textured mode, and maybe I'll try and select this little buckle here. I'm going to press Shift B and drag a selection to zoom in, and then I'm going to press Alt F to center the tumble rotation of my view around that point. So then I'm going to select these pieces and just put a little bit of specular on this as well. Just a little. Just painting right there so we get a little bit of a shine. There we go. And if I switch to rendered, you can see it's got just a little bit of a shine there. So that's specular information. You can go through and paint some more on here. There are I've got other buckles. You can also go back and paint in some specular information on the leather straps or the helmet or the boots or whatever. So wherever people come in contact with things, whenever we grab anything or hold anything, maybe like the little wings on the or straps on the helmet, usually you can find that those parts are a little bit more shiny just because of the grease from our hands and everything. So, I mean, if you want to get that detailed, you can, of course, do that. Well, I think we're finally to the point where we can begin finishing up with texture painting. And that final step would be to bake out our textures so that we can use them as image maps. Now, if you were just going to stay in the Blender internal render engine here and do your animation that way, you could, I guess, just leave it as is and just animate it with the texture slots as is. But I'd like to either do one of two things. One, I'd like to use the Cycles rendering engine, or if you're interested in exporting textures out for a video game, this is how you do that as well. So let's take a look at how we would do this. First of all, let's go back to our texture slots here. I'm going to zoom out. And so what we need to do is bake out our two color layers here into one so that we just have one color map that we will feed into the color channel of our material. Now we could have had many more layers in here. If you're feeling adventurous, you can create lots more layers in here, and you can bake any number of them out at the same time. The way you do that is just to uncheck the ones that you don't want. So let's take a look at that. So I'm going to come over here to the textures area here. And here are my textures. I've got my color and my color detail. What I'd like to do is bake out these two textures into one color map. To do that, I need a new image for the color to bake onto. So I need a new canvas for these to bake onto. So I'm going to come down here to Image, go to New Image. And for this, I'll call it, I don't know, what is this? Kid Color. And I'll make this 2048 by 2048. And black is fine. So I'll just click OK. So there is the image that I'm going to bake onto. Now I need to save this to my hard drive, I'm going to go to Image, Save as Image, and this is fine, this kid color here. Okay, so now the next thing I need to do is begin the bake process. So I'm going to go over here to the render panel, and if I scroll all the way down here, there is a section called Bake, and I'll roll that out and scroll down some. So here's where we set up what kind of bake we're going to do. We could do the full render. For the color, we're going to do textures. For the bump information, we'll do normals. So I'm going to choose textures here. And just for good measure, I'm going to go back into object mode here. And I'll select my character. And I'm going to go into edit mode and select all of my UVs. Now I need to bring back the image I want to bake onto here, that kid color. And then lastly, I believe we're ready just to hit bake. Let's give it a try. And now it's going to give you a little progress bar up at the top. But now it's going through and baking the combination of the two color maps into one. All right, so let's take a look at that. And there it is, our image map. So I've combined the two with the details and the color base all into one map. Now the one thing I did here is I left the clear check mark here, and that removed the black from underneath the texture when it baked it out. So now it's just a clear, transparent file underneath there. That's okay. I'll uncheck that when we do the normal map to show you how that works. But now that we have this, let's go ahead and go to Image and Save Image, so we know we have that on the hard drive. All right, so let's do this again with the bump information. So I'm going to turn on bump and turn off the color. Now you can see the bump information on there now that we've turned off the color. Let's create a new image for the normal map. So let's go to Image, New Image. Let's call this kid_NOR for normal map. 2048 by 2048 is good. And let's click OK. So now we go back to our bake panel, change to normals, and this time I'm going to turn off clear and see if that helps see what that does. And I'm going to go to object mode, hit tab key to go to edit mode. I'm going to switch to my normal map image, and now I'm just going to click bake. And once again, it begins to fill in the UV map with our normal information. And there we go. We've got now this, you can see the bump information that's been transferred to the normal map right here. And this time, yes, since I unchecked clear, now we get the black on the background. I'll go back and do mine again because I kind of like the black on the background. It doesn't really matter, but it's just, it looks better, I think. All right. So now that we've got our normal map, I better save this again, right? Looks like I already have. Okay. No, I better do save as image and save it to the hard drive. I haven't done that yet, have I? Okay. So now the specular map, we can just use as is. I'll just use that as the specular map. I don't really need to do anything to it per se. If I had multiple channels, I could bake out a specular map, but I think I'll just leave it as is. So in the next video, we will take a look at using the node editor to feed our color map, specular map, normal map into a cycles material. So hope to see you then. Take care.